The Washington State transfer Myles Rice may just be the best player on the team for Indiana basketball right now.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this, the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sport stops sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, thank you so much again for making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics and for truly making this your first listen each and every day. If you're on audio, if you're on YouTube, I appreciate you, and shout out to my everydayers. You are the reason this podcast is so successful. Well, as we get out of the summer and we start to hear some more news from what happened during summer practice for Indiana basketball, it's starting to become clear that there's a couple of really, really good players on this roster. And I think one guy who transferred in over the offseason, who came in from another Pac-5, well, I guess Pac-4, RIP to the Pac-12, a guy that came in, I think has really set himself apart and has become, I think, not just a leader on this team, but he flat out may just be the best player on the roster right now. We'll talk about Myles Rice today. Also, who else could be in that category of best players on the roster maybe right now, or who we could see develop through the rest of the season. And then as fall camp begins this week for Indiana football, is there a quarterback battle happening in Bloomington? I'll give you a hint. Yes, there is. Myles Rice for Indiana basketball, the transfer, one of the many that the Hoosiers brought in this offseason because, let's admit, we needed them, especially in the guard position, right? You had to replace Xavier Johnson. You had to help out Gabe Cupps and Trey Galloway. So you go and you pick up Myles Rice and Kanaan Carlyle. And while the Kanaan Carlyle thing continues to be an ongoing discussion, and there are disagreements all over the place on whether he's going to be the guy, whether he will be a starter, whether he's coming off the bench with Trey Galloway starting, that's still an open conversation for a different time. I want to focus on Myles Rice, who 100%, without a doubt, will be your starting point guard for 2024 and 2025 for Mike Woodson and this Indiana basketball team. It's a given. It's a fact. I'm just telling you like it is, okay? And I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. And from what I was told, out of the summer practices and the summer workouts, Myles Rice is one of the best players on the team. And some of you may say, well, that's kind of scary, bringing in a transfer and he's already one of the best. What does that say about the rest of the roster? Yes, I see where you're coming from, but don't look at it that way. Look at it the other way of, man, Indiana just went and got one of the best transfer portal guys of the offseason, of the class. I mean, I think we brought in the best portal class in general. Depends on where you look, I guess, what site that you're on. But I think we brought in the best portal class, and it's really not even close. That includes Myles Rice, who everybody has said, coming out of the summer periods, the summer windows, that his speed and agility is unbelievable. His ball handling is off the charts. And his leadership and just charisma on the floor is what's going to lead this Indiana team this upcoming season. And you look back to a year ago and so many struggles and so many of those games where the offense just stalled out. I mean, even after hot starts, I look at Atlanta when we went down and played Auburn in the Holiday Hoops Giving. Remember how that started? We hit 3 after 3 after 3, and then it died. It was done. It was in the history books because Auburn just took off and embarrassed us on national television. We missed out on having elite guard play, and that's what this team is missing. That's how you win in March. I've told you that. That's how you win in March, is elite guard play. So many high-level analysts will tell you that too. And Indiana was missing that a year ago. I'm sorry, we were. Xavier Johnson in and out with injury. Even when he was healthy, it wasn't getting the job done. Trey Galloway had a terrible year last year in terms of his standards because we know how good he can be. And Gabe Cupps, God love him, it's just not meant to be. He's not going to win you big-time basketball games as your starting point guard. And Mike Woodson knew that. Mike Woodson and this staff, they knew that. So they went out and they got somebody, and they got a winner in Myles Rice. Just to remind you about what Myles Rice did a year ago at Washington State. Shot 44% from the field, 27.5% from three. We'll get to that in a second. 81% from the free throw line. I'd like to see that be a little bit better. He had a ton of rebounds, okay? Triple-digit rebounds, 134 assists over the season, and kind of his game averages for those of you that may be looking for that. He averaged 15 points a game, all right? 15 points a game, 1.5 steals per game, 4 assists per game as well, and 2.5 turnovers per game. So I'd like to see the turnover number go down, the assist number rise. But if he walks in and he's dropping 15 points and 4 assists a game, I'm cool with that. And he's stealing two balls a game, love it. That's exactly what Indiana needs. Yes, the three-point shot needs to get a little bit better too, but from what I'm hearing, it's just with the ball in his hands, he's that guy. He just has the command of the offense. And I continue to go back to last year because there was a lot of talent on that team a year ago, right? You got a dude that's playing in the NBA now in Khalil Ware that was on that team. You have another guy, Malik Reneau, that you're bringing back. Mgabko's the same way. And now you bring in Oumar Ballo to replace the 7-footer with, another 7-footer. But you were missing the guard play to set those guys up for success. I think Myles Rice and Kanaan Carlyle, for that matter, can be that. But Myles Rice is and will be one of the best players on the team this year. He's going to have the pick and roll game down. He's going to have his assist game on point. He's going to pass out of traps, and he's going to be able to set up guys, whether it's in the half court or whether it's in transition. And you're just going to see a more calming sense with the team when Myles Rice is on the floor. Now, what does the backup guard unit look like? We're still trying to figure that out a little bit. And unfortunately, there may be some news with that guard room that may not help us out this season. And that's really unfortunate. That's for a later time. But they've got to figure that out. And I guarantee no matter who it is that comes off the bench, Gabe Cupps will be in that rotation. Just be ready for that. You will feel a difference when Myles Rice is on the floor and when he's not on the floor. And for me, that tells me how good of a player he is. That tells me how good of a player someone is if you can feel when they walk off the floor in terms of the flow of the game and the flow of the offense. And I think that's what you're going to see with Myles Rice. That's not a good thing, okay? It's a good thing for Myles Rice, but the Hoosiers have to find a way to overcome that because he can't play 40 minutes a game. He just can't do it. I love the guy, but he ain't that good, okay? You've got to find a way to overcome that. But I'm telling you right now, coming out of the summer and as we head into the fall, get closer to the season, Myles Rice, the transfer point guard for Indiana basketball, is and will be one of the best players on this year's team. Well, coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, outside of Myles Rice, who else could step up? Who else could be one of those guys on the team this year to just flat out make Indiana basketball better? We'll talk about that coming up next on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, I love sports, and I love them so much that I just never want them to stop, and I'm sure that you feel the same way. But as the playoffs are over, we get fewer and fewer games, and the sports just aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And hey, it's about time to start getting those college football bets locked up, right? Who's winning the championship, right? Who's going to win the Big Ten? Who's making it to the playoff? Who's winning the Heisman this year? It's time to start getting those bets ready to go on FanDuel. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Again, appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. My everydayers, I love you guys. You are the ones. I see you, I do, and you are the reason that this show is doing so well. And if you're not an everydayer, it's really easy to become one, I promise. Like this video, that's the first step. comment down below on YouTube who you think is going to be the best player on the team this year for Indiana basketball. And then you simply click on our logo and hit the subscribe button. That's it. That's all it takes. You'll be notified every time we post a new episode. Same thing goes for all of my audio listeners. I see you over there too, I promise. You can follow us there, turn on notifications, do whatever you got to do. Just make sure Locked On Hoosiers is your first listen each and every day. Well, outside of Myles Rice, who I believe is going to be one of, if not the best players on the team this year, who else could be that guy? Who else does Indiana need to be in that conversation for best player on the team if we want to have a successful season? I feel the go-to answer for most people, and for myself too, is Mgabko, who we are all looking to take that sophomore leap, right? To continue to work on his game and get better. And the things I was told and hearing coming out of the summer is, yeah, the guy's on fire. The guy's playing really, really good basketball. And all signs point to him making that leap and making that jump, but he just has to do it, right? There's a lot of a difference between summer workouts and practices against your own team and doing it in this expanded Big Ten conference. But I believe he can. I do. I believe that Mgabko has everything he needs to be that guy, to be the guy that Indiana needs him to be, which is a spot-up shooter, one of the best on the team, and a guy that is just physically better than everybody else. Come in and be dominant with it in your hands, the ball in your hands, off the ball. Just be a physical presence. I feel like Mgabko struggled to play to his size sometimes last year. And it's almost, since this happens all the time. It happens all the time. You see guys like him where they forget how big they are. They start to focus on the finesse side of things. They start to focus on their spin moves or a hook shot or the three-point ball. And they forget that they're almost 7 feet tall. You know what I'm saying? Like and I'm not just talking Mgabko in general, but you're looking at guys who are 6'7", 8, 9 and above. And sometimes they get caught up in all the logistics that they just forget, hey, I'm big, physical, and strong. Let me just go to the basket. And I think that Mgabko can do that this year for Indiana basketball. So absolutely put him in that conversation for one of the best. Oumar Ballo, this is an interesting one, right? This is an interesting test that we're going to have for him. The big question that everybody's been asking with him is, okay, what kind of physical shape can he be in? He's a big dude now. He's a really, really big guy. And can he, and I say that in the nicest way, I really do. He's 7 foot tall, man. I mean, it's a lot of body. Can he keep up throughout an entire season, running up and down the floor? Because I think this team is going to push the basketball more than they did a year ago, which is why I feel Khalil Ware and Malik Reneau didn't really have any stamina problems. They did down the stretch, especially in the Big Ten tournament. But overall, I don't think that was a major issue. But if you have Myles Rice and Kanaan Carlyle, who are going to be pushing the ball up the floor in transition, which I begged for a year ago. Oh, I pleaded for it. My everydayers know that. If you do that this year, then yeah, Ballo's going to have to keep up, man. He's going to have to keep up because there is size on this team, but unfortunately, there's not a ton. You've got Ballo, you've got Reneau, you've got Goody, and then you're starting to kind of look and say, all right, who else is on the roster? There's some news coming up about that as well, so stick around for future episodes of Locked On Hoosiers. But Ballo's going to have to find a way to keep up. If he does, then yeah, he'll be one of the best players, not just at Indiana. I think one of the best players in the Big Ten. The pick and roll is going to be there. Defensively, he's going to be there. The physical dominance inside, offensively and defensively, he's just going to be that dude. And then you look at a Malik Reneau who has his spurts, right? We all believe that Malik can be such a dominant player for this team and this program. You got to stay out of foul trouble. You can't be dominant if you're on the bench. I can promise you that. You're not going to be any good if you're sitting over there watching from the sidelines because you've got 4 fouls in the first 18 minutes of the game. Like, no, you're not going to be a good player, or even worse, you're not going to be a good impact on this team. If he can stay out of that and then hopefully play a true 4, then yeah, I think Malik Reneau is going to be in that conversation as, hey, I'm one of the best players on this team. Use me in the pick and roll. Use me in the rebound game. Use me on the run. And I look for that this year. This is a side note, but I look for that this year so much. Alley-oops, man. I'm selfish. I want to see it because they're awesome and they're fun and it gets everybody going crazy. But if you do them correctly, they're gimme buckets. 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, alley-oops or gimme buckets. They're indefensible if you do them the right way, if you know how to do them, if the communication is on point, if you know where your teammates are going to be before they get there. That's what this whole summer and getting into the fall and getting into the season, that's what that's about, right? That's what you use that time for, is to get on the same page. So then, yeah, when you're running down the floor against Purdue and it's Myles Rice and Kanaan Carlyle, or it's Myles Rice or either one of those and Malik Reneau or Mgabko or even Oumar Ballo, yeah, you just lob it up Dwayne Wade style and run the other way as our own LeBron James throws it down. You see what I'm saying here? That needs to happen. And that could be done with Ballo, Reneau, Mgabko, Goody. I mean, it can be done with any of those guys, which will make them such big impacts on this team. If you can't tell, I'm really excited about the roster. And it's not that last year's was bad, but this year's is just so much better. And it's deeper, right? It really is deeper. And I told you in one of the previous episodes that Trey Galloway, I would love for him to become one of the better players on this team again, because last year he just wasn't. I'm sorry, he wasn't. But 2 years ago, he was. He was one of the best. And if he gets back to that stature, if he gets back to anywhere close to what he was doing behind the three-point line, shooting over 40% from beyond the arc, if he gets back to doing that, then he'll be in the conversation with Myles Rice as one of the better players on the team. And think about it this way. If he is in that conversation and he is shooting like that and making defensive plays and having good effort and good attitude and coming off the bench being that's my point. He'll be coming off the bench. Maybe he will earn a starting role. I don't know. Maybe that'll change throughout the year. But then that just gives you options, man. That's where I'm getting at here. You got to have options. You can't just have two guys that are your go-to every time and run them into the ground and then wonder why it doesn't work in March. And I'm talking Khalil Ware and Malik Reneau a year ago, because that's what we did. That's all we had. That's all we had. You had Mgabko at times. You had Galloway for 2 games. You had Xavier Johnson once. You got saved by Anthony Leal a couple of times. That's not cool. That's not cool this year. That's not going to fly with me. You have options now. You have guys that are willing and able to step up and be some of the better players on this team and some of the better players in the Big Ten. I want to see it happen. Not just Myles Rice. I'm talking Malik Reneau. Take that next step, young man. Mgabko, same thing. Galloway, get back to being the Galloway we know. And just make this team so talented and so good moving into 24 and 25. Well, coming up in our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll transition over to football because fall practice is way done. Fall practice begins this week for Indiana football, and fans are starting to wonder, who's the starting quarterback going to be? We'll talk about that in our final segment coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Ibotta. Are you taking that dream vacation this summer but dreading the cost? With Ibotta, you get cash back on all of your purchases, so you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip at the grocery store, that flight you've been looking at, or fancy dinner that you've been craving. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores like Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. I downloaded Ibotta. I use it now almost everywhere I go, whether I'm at the store or if I'm going to buy even a luxury or something that I just want, not necessarily a need. I use Ibotta and I'm earning that cash back, and you can see it happening as you do it. So go and download the Ibotta app. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. So go to your App Store or the Google Play Store, whichever one you have, and download the free Ibotta app and start earning cash back and use our code LockedOnCollege. Okay, that's the requirement. Got to use the code LockedOnCollege when you do it. That's IBOTTA, Ibotta, IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use our code LockedOnCollege, and they're going to give you $5 just for trying it out. So go to Ibotta and download the app today. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is also brought to you by Factor Meals. Warmer, sunnier days are calling fuel up for them for Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Folks, I ordered mine. All right, mine are in the mail as we speak. They're going to be here at my house, I think early next week. And I cannot wait because I'm starting to cut some calories. I'm trying to exercise a little bit more. You know, I sit for a long time doing things like this. And so I just want to be a little bit healthier. And now that we have Factor, I'm like, you know what? Let's get on this. Let's try it out. And so I've got mine in the mail and I did the calorie deficit part of it, but you can do all sorts of different ones. They have 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. So you'll always have new flavors to explore. You can enjoy it because it's effortless and all you do is heat it up. That's my favorite part. I can't wait. I don't want to cook it. I just want to heat it up and eat it because I don't have time for that. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active with Factor. Final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here again, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. If you're looking for your second listen of the day, because Locked On Hoosiers is, of course, your first listen every day, I recommend you go check out Locked On College Basketball and Locked On College Football. Go check out Isaac and Andy with basketball as they get you ready for the start of the season coming up in just a few months. All the biggest stories coming out of the summer. Be sure you go check out Locked On College Basketball. You can type that in on your audio platform or on YouTube if you're watching the video. Same thing with Locked On College Football. All right, my guy Spencer over there doing a fantastic job. Used to be Locked On Pac-12, but that conference doesn't exist anymore, RIP. And so you can go check out his new show, Locked On College Football, as fall practices begin around campuses this week. And we are about a month from week 1, even less than that from week 0. So go check out Locked On College Football as well. And that's a really good transition for our final segment here on the show because Indiana starts fall practice this week. And so many fans are starting to wonder, okay, brought in a lot of talent, new coach, new coaching staff. It's going to be an overhauled roster. There's no doubt. But the question that everybody wants to know, who's going to be the starting quarterback? And there are a couple of guys on this roster that you have to get to know because Cignetti went out and brought in new guys. He brought in new quarterbacks with Taven Jackson, who was here a year ago, right? You have a couple of guys, 3 quarterbacks that he brought in this offseason. Curtis Rourke, the transfer from Ohio, the true freshman, Tyler Cherry, who's a top 15 quarterback in the country, and then Alberto Mendoza, who is ranked number 84th in terms of quarterbacks. So you bring in 2 young guys, an experienced transfer, and you still have Taven Jackson in the room. And there are a lot of people who maybe aren't the biggest fans of Taven Jackson because of how last year went. And I totally understand. I think there were flashes a year ago. I think there were signs that he could be the guy a year ago and maybe even coming into this year. But with so many unknowns, we just didn't really know what the room was going to look like. And with Curt Cignetti, in case you haven't noticed, this guy and his coaches on offense are quarterback gurus, man. They are geniuses when it comes to quarterbacks. And the big ones that you need to know, Tino Sunseri, the quarterback's coach and co-offensive coordinator, and then his offensive coordinator, Mike Shanahan. Okay. Those are guys, the names that you need to know that have been the successors under him for so long and made the quarterback so good at everywhere they've been. And you start looking at the room and you're like, okay, is it going to be Taven Jackson, the returning guy from a year ago? Will it be Tyler Cherry, a very highly rated, exciting young guy to start for the Indiana Hoosiers? Or will it be Curtis Rourke, the Ohio transfer who has played a ton of football in his college career? I think signs are pointing towards Rourke, and I think that just makes the most sense, right? You don't go and get a transfer guy like him if you don't expect him to play. I think Tyler Cherry may be looking at this as the future of the Indiana football program unless somebody else were to come in. And look, Taven Jackson's still here, and Cignetti had some things to say about these guys. And he's claimed that last week at Big Ten Media Days, he's probably not going to name a starter. He says, I've never seen the value in that. And you know what? I respect it, because in today's world, there's so much pressure to do that nowadays. And some coaches give in, but doesn't sound like Cignetti's going to do that at all. And some of his quotes about the quarterbacks here, he says, quote, I feel really good about Curtis Rourke. He goes on to say, I think Taven Jackson has improved, but needs to keep improving in terms of his preparation and processing and playing quarterback at a high level. I'm talking about the mental part of it and decision-making, but he's made some significant progress. And we've got two young guys that we like, so I want to promote competition at every position. And look, competition brings out the best in everybody. And, well, I guess the best in most. But in this case, you hope that it brings out the best in them. And if it brings out the worst, then you did your job anyway, and you figured out the guy that you don't want. I don't think that's an issue here. I'm just saying in general, Curt Cignetti is a fan of competition, and it sounds like Curtis Rourke is going to be the guy. And why would you not want Curtis Rourke to be the guy? He's got 33 career starts, all MAC second team a year ago when he threw for 64%, 2,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 5 picks in 11 games. All right. And the year before that, he threw for 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, and just 4 picks. So that's the guy that Cignetti's trying to go find and pull that back out. And I think Curt Cignetti and his staff absolutely can do that. So while we may not know an official starter going into the opener, I think you're going to have a good idea. It will most likely be the Ohio transfer, Curtis Rourke. But keep your eye on Tyler Cherry, man. I like that kid. I think he's going to be really good. And whether he sees the field much this year or it's in the future for the Indiana Hoosiers, keep your eye on him. Tyler Cherry, the young guy. But I have a feeling Curtis Rourke will be your man for 2024. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you, man. I really do. I appreciate y'all being here and making this your first listen each and every day. If you haven't already, all right, my audio listeners, follow us, turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Those of you on the YouTube channel, be sure you like the video, comment down below on the things we talked about today. Who's the best player on Indiana basketball's roster right now? Who does it need to be this year? And what starting quarterback do you want to see in the opener coming up in about a month for Indiana football? And then before you go, be sure you subscribe to our channel, okay? We'll be back tomorrow for another episode right here on Locked On Hoosiers. So until then, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.